Joining us now is Jonny von Wolfstrom, the director of the Pearl of Africa.
Hey, hello. Oh, I'm actually a little bit bright. I got this so set up. It's actually pretty damn interesting with OBS and the LUTs they use, that I use for this. You actually have to create this weird looking type of thing in Photoshop, and that acts as your LUT. Yeah, pretty weird. I don't know. Anybody that's done it probably knows what I'm talking about. Once again, I forgot to record the stream, so, or almost. I actually didn't really forget about it, but I just gotta put a hard drive into the camera, like so. Rec. Let me just check. We got it. Okay, so how are you guys doing? Who do we have? Let's see. Ahmad asks, how do you come up with a script? For me, I think it's kind of an organic process. It usually just starts with, you know, an idea for like a concept, an issue, something that you wanna basically try to discover, or like just go on a journey to understand, or it's something that you just want to make or tell a story that you have to tell. And once you have that, I just go into a rabbit hole of research, which can be like very long or very short. Like I just go into the rabbit hole of Google, try to search for stuff that's related, because I tend to find that the more information you have about a topic, the better your idea is going to be. So I do like extensive researching on both like subject, people, just stories, random stuff that's connected to the whole thing before I even write anything. Eventually I have to write something down just for applications, and also to be able to work with other people you need to do that. There's a bit of a difference in like how you do it for film, for instance, for getting funded from an institution or something. For that, you usually just do like a synopsis, and it's like a very formal application type of thing. But when you do for like commercials, you actually do like a 30 to 50 page document that's called a treatment, and then you write everything down, and you do everything in a really like visual way. You try to get them into the story and put them into how you're picturing the whole thing. So then you need to do a lot of research in order for you to convey that with like mood boards and describing things like tonality, which they love. Tonality and look is what all docs for brands are about. But then for myself, I don't feel the need to write a script. I've written scripts for fiction as well, but I just felt like that process killed the whole thing for me. I like not deciding things. I like discovering things with the camera. So that's why I tend to go towards docs and not fiction as well. But then eventually you have to write something down. I usually start shooting, and then I go back and I write, try to like see how things are connected, watch the material. I don't edit that much besides trailers and that sort of thing. And then I go back, shoot some more, and I write more, and it's just an ongoing organic thing. It's not like I sit down and I write the whole script for the film, or a treatment, or whatever it is. Synopsis I write. And then I usually keep like a scene list, and I mind map things like I have here on the wall. I have like the different characters, what desires they have, how they're connected, because it's a 4-character type of story. Yeah. But I have like 2 videos, I think, on script writing for me. So if you want to check that out, check that out. It's a bit more in depth. Let me see what they ask in the social feeds. There was one question, I remember it. Sweden versus England on Saturday. England isn't really a good team. They've pretty much never been a good team. I don't know if you're into football, soccer, but they're not really good, which is good for me as a Swede because we're gonna compete against England. But they have a little bit of over-belief in themselves. They're basically kind of similar in like how Sweden are in skill level, I think. But they have a couple of stars that might be like a tiny bit better. But as a collective, they aren't that good. Like you saw, if you watch Colombia versus them, how they kind of panicked as soon as things didn't go their way. That's how I see England. So it's going to be interesting to see Sweden play them. Because Sweden has had like Zlatan for a long time. He's like a huge star. He was like a huge star. Now he's in the US, so it's not as relevant. But still, he was like Sweden's #1 name for a long time. And now all of a sudden he's gone. And then, because Swedish people are really like timid and they don't like to stick out and be like this person in the limelight. But Zlatan likes that. And he, I think, made it difficult for the rest to have confidence in themselves. And then it's up to the coach to be like, oh, put the team together. Our previous coach sucked. So now we got a good coach, good team that's like together. If Zlatan would have been there, we would have won the World Cup pretty much. Now he isn't in there, so we might just get to the finals. We'll see. I don't know. But England, bye-bye. Saturday is your last day. Anyway, on to the filmmaking. Let's see. Artlist or Epidemic for a doc? I think working with sites like that, in general, I feel like it's okay if you make a short doc, it's going to be YouTube centric, then it's one thing, then both of them are good, then just pick the one that you think works best in like the type of style you like. If you want like mood music and stems and that sort of thing, then Epidemic is much better and it's much more like you can find specific type of atmospheres and that type of stuff. But if you want tracks, like if you want proper bands, then like Artlist is the way to go, because they have like proper albums from artists. So it depends on what style you're going for. But I would try to get somebody to compose, because you get like if you do a feature, it's not going to be original, and most of the stuff you hear, if you hear it all over YouTube, like you've heard so much of it in YouTube, and also when you look at the stuff that you hear in commercials, a lot of it is like Artlist and Epidemic here in Sweden as well. So I would try to stay away from it if I want the story to be original. There's so much people on SoundCloud that probably would be down for doing the music for a film and that sort of thing. So I would just try to collaborate with people, or contact the composers, or contact Epidemic, for instance, and talk to them about having somebody compose for you if you have the funds for it. Yeah. Let's see. How do you come up with script? Answer that. Okay, so Jordan, hey, I was wondering how to find the best workflow for filming, editing a long documentary project. Do you like to edit pieces as you go, or wait until you're done shooting entirely? I try to like test out the story, and I do that in like a trailer form, or like a longer pilot version that's probably like 5 to 10 minutes type format. And I do that mostly just to kind of feel the story, feel the scenes, and feel like the pace and all those things. And try to find a style, both in like cinematography. I reevaluate everything when I come back, like cinematography, audio, story, scenes, like all those things I look at, and characters. And that's easier to do when you try it out. But usually I wait a bit, and then eventually when I go into the edit, then I start to edit scene by scene. And I don't put it together at all until all the scenes are there. And then I start looking at the scenes and like think about them, try to map stuff out. Like usually, I don't know if I have, no, I don't have anything here, but usually I then like print a photo of each scene, like a key moment in that scene, so I know what scenes there are, and then I put like, I'm better with images. When you try to put stuff together, you just put it up like post-its on a wall, but instead you have images. So then I try to just put the story together like that, and then eventually when I have an idea of that, then I try to put it together, and usually then it's much quicker, and I usually let it process as well, because when you sit down and you edit, as soon as you take that decision to cut something, you're actually like also deciding not to do a lot of things. So I try to let things process for a while before I actually go and edit, if it's a feature film. But if it's something else, like I would do like a short doc or something, I would just like go and play with the material straight away, pretty much. Then I don't even write anything, because I have an idea, and it's easier to like try things out, because that's basically just like cutting a scene or like an intro to a movie, I feel. So then it's a bit different. But if it's like a feature film, then you have to kind of go through a big process to get the big arc of the whole thing. Alessandro, how do you find a crew and actors? I'm 15 and I have a lot of good ideas, but nobody to work with. Any advice? Crew, I would say like there's always these interest groups, or like, what do you call them? There's like a lot of the Scandinavian countries have like state-supported groups that are supporting filmmakers, for instance, like institutionalized stuff. But in the US it's a bit different. Then you have more like, it's more like an NGO, and like Sundance or Sundance Institute or that sort of thing. And you have like small scale, like micro versions of that as well. So I would try to, first of all, be part of that. And then I would try to be part of the film community. I would try to get together with people that are like-minded. It's so much easier with YouTube, for instance. Like just hanging out with people online and then going together and doing a project together, that's pretty easy. That's basically what we're doing with Maddie, for instance. So I would say that's one way of doing it. With actors, though, it's actually the same with crew. You can also find sites that are centered towards just finding people. So like Mandy.com, I know, was an international site back in the day. I think it's still there. But in Sweden there is something called like Film Cafe, which is basically a site where everybody goes, especially extras and people that wants to be actors or actresses. So yeah, just check for your country what's there, and then go to film festivals as well, because that's where people hang out that are film interested, and try to volunteer at film festivals, because then you'll work with like-minded people. Mr. Hacks, how are you doing, Jonny? I'm good. Yeah, I had like a lot of pitches that I had to finish up. That's why this stream is today and not Monday. Because it takes like a shitload of time to pitch an advertising campaign when it's like the bigger type of budgets. And this is not even like massive, but it's like 100K type of budget or two of those projects. And then you basically put in all your effort into like, you probably spend like 4 days developing a treatment and putting that together. It goes back and forth between you and the agency. They give feedback. You have to do a lot of research without having even gotten the project yet. But then I also edited for one of them. I actually did like a template film to like better my chances, or at least like, this is the idea. Do you think this is good? So yeah, I'm kind of stressed out because of that, but other than that, yeah, all good. Dust35, hi Jonny, how do you justify working in the studio when it's a great summer weather like today? I actually didn't. That's the good thing. Usually I actually get up at 4 AM and then I work, I don't know, if it's good weather, probably to lunch or something, but otherwise like 3. and then I work in the evenings a little bit, but that's like for good weather days, because Sweden usually don't have like this. Summer is pretty much every day is good weather, so it's kind of hard to have that work ethic, but that's how I usually do it. And then for a day like this, for instance, I've been doing the treatment stuff, and then I've just been on a laptop, so then I could be like everywhere just with my tiny computer doing the presentations and stuff. But sitting and editing, I want to do that between like 4 a.m. until 10 a.m. and then I'd go and do other stuff, probably work outside. Yeah, that's how you should do it. Sweden doesn't give you the opportunity not to be outside. I wrote a script for a short film and bought some lighting to film, but none of my friends want to be in the movie, and now I can't afford actors. There's tons of people that want to do it for free just because they want like work references, as long as the idea is good and you can pitch it to them. So you should be able to do that if you can kind of sell them on your ID. Yeah. Yeah, Swedish team is not good. No, it's not. But better than England. Kind of the same. So we have probably better mentality to win, hopefully. Who knows? Jacob, thank you for the super chat. Let's see, did you... No question there. Yeah, I don't believe why Colombia lost either. Kind of crazy. You had it. You really did. And then nothing. But that's football. Okay. I'm preparing a small series of interviews with some interesting people. What's the question you would ask a person with interesting lifestyle? It will be helpful to me. What would I ask? Let me think on that. I'll try to like simultaneously go through this and come back to it. I'm looking for masters in Germany. Do you think a master's degree in filmmaking or documentary will be beneficial, or should I just depend on YouTube and practice more? I already have some experience. You know, I thought about this because there was somebody that asked the same thing on, maybe it was you, I'm not sure. Let me just check for that question, because people usually ask me about like education, and I'm not a big fan of education. Like I think that it's much more efficient if you can educate yourself to be able to educate yourself. Like if you can learn how to learn things yourself, that's a big asset to have. And in general, I think people have too much belief in that just studying will solve your issues. Most people that study filmmaking do not, and I mean most, I mean like 95% probably don't get a job going out of their education and stuff. So it's not a set thing. What I would say is like, think about it in this way. When you go to school, you learn things that you could always study on yourself or by yourself. Anything you learn in school, you could study yourself. But what you do get is like a group of like-minded people and all that, where you can kind of do it together and have like a little bit of a push. If you don't have that internally, so that you push yourself to do these things, then that can be a good thing or a necessity for you to get to the next level, like skill-wise and all those things, or build a network and have like a comfortable way of doing that. The people that do succeed, though, they would do it either way. They would succeed because they have the drive to do it. And I think whatever you study, you're still gonna have that issue of like, do you have the drive? Do you really want to do it more than everybody else? Because that's what it takes eventually. You need to want it even more than everybody else. And then on top of that, I just say if people, this probably goes for fiction as well, but especially for docs. If you have a certain interest in doc filmmaking, I'd say that it's much more important if you look at skill assets and what you learn. Studying anthropology or studying like science, if science docs are what you want to do, that's probably a better thing, because that research that you do, that's actually valuable on a deeper level. Anybody can learn filmmaking. So if it's a degree that you need for something, then that can be like something that's more valuable in my opinion. Because like anybody can film today pretty much. Anybody can just pick up a camera and buy it and go out and shoot stuff. It's more about like having the drive to do it. And if people think that like an education will solve that for them, then they're just like kidding themselves, because it all comes down to you doing the work in the end. And that's why I think like educations can be like a false safety for you. So if you feel like that's the way to go, then you should also like question, like, can you do this without it? Then I think like education can just be a resource. Because if you would do it either way, if you would go and study and even without it you would succeed, then going to an education will actually be like getting resources and going out and doing it and doing the best out of it. Maybe having a YouTube channel while you do the whole thing in the university, and then building that while you're there, then it makes sense. But to do it to get work, I don't think it makes sense. Because that's not what's going to get you work. It's going to be like, what films have you made? Or what films have you worked on, basically. And going out and assisting somebody is quicker and less expensive. Greetings from Morocco. Hey, Morocco. Thanks for the quality content. You're welcome. I really like your lighting on this live stream video. Thanks. Do you have any advice to think of when setting up something similar? I do. Like this, for instance. That light there. That's a small light there. Oops. There, behind this. It's actually a window there, so it could be fine sometimes when the sun is shining in, but just to think about it in like how much depth you create by lighting something that comes in the background. And then I actually have this like blue light coming here just to make it more moody or whatever, like a little bit of color into the whole thing, because it's not, yeah, there is like a weird grade lot that you do in OBS, but that's about it. And then I just have like light here coming this way. That's it. It's super simple. It's just like one light up there that gives the blue light, and then the one in the window that gives that light, and then this here. And it's just soft coming this way. That's pretty hard, and that's pretty hard. But it's actually super small, like LED there, and that's a Fresnel with a filter on. So yeah, think about the depth. Think about like lighting with, this is like a backlight coming from up there. This is just for the background, and this for the face. I just keep it simple and like put stuff in angles so that you get like, you see you have more shadow here. Just think about like lighting stuff that gives character, and not just like a big light that's like a ring light or something like that. It's just like too bright or something. Yeah. Just started watching your videos from when Matty started filming when you were in the Yukon. I'm a young filmmaker from Toronto. Keep up the fantastic work, man. Thank you, Curtis. Happy to have you here. I don't know how many people that, I don't think it's more than a couple of hundred probably that came from Matty, but all of you, welcome to this channel here. Video output low. Why are you saying YouTube not maintain smooth experience? So if you experience buffering, something's wrong. It usually fixes itself, so we'll see. Let me know if it struggles. Okay. Jakob Svan. Storytelling is so important, but how can I get better at telling stories? Like, how can I work on that skill? I love your work, learn so much every time I watch your videos. Thank you. kind of, to put it simple, I guess, like a thing that's a like pretty important thing when you think about storytelling is to pretty much always keep people guessing. Give them as much information as they need to keep interested, but then as little as possible to keep them watching. So the way that like narrative arcs work is like you have like, okay, so something or some obstacle that somebody's trying to overcome. That's why most vloggers that are like doing the cinematic stuff has like a progression forward, trying to solve something is a progression. So you should always think about like having obstacles to overcome and building it around the conflict of those things and trying to resolve that. But then also build all the scenes so that like all the scenes basically just get you a little bit closer to that without solving it, so that people stay hooked. And then another thing that I would do is probably like change stuff and surprise people all the time. Try to switch things up to make them like interested and finding out clues along the way, and trying to kind of have layers of storytelling going on, not having like you, for instance, the classic vlogging thing. Oh, I'm here, good morning, I'm doing this, I'm eating this. That type of stuff is like super boring and totally uninspiring in terms of narrative storytelling. If you want people to like be in some interested way trying to discover your story, not saying things but showing things is the way to go. So showing people that you're eating is better than saying, yeah, I just had this hamburger. That doesn't like give them any goosebumps or anything. I guess they're not going to get goosebumps from seeing somebody eat a hamburger either, but you understand the whole concept of like show not tell is based upon like having not anything that you don't have to say be said in words. Basically show stuff with the cinematic language of film, not by telling it. That's what you should practice. Like try to tell stories without saying things. That's at least like what most stuff is. It's like, I read some editor, I think it's Walter Murch, like a famous feature film, mainly fiction editor. I think he watches scenes silently to see how they play out, not only to find like the cutting points, but mainly also to see how much the visuals or like the images can tell, like by how people act, by how he cuts things, how much can you tell the story without any audio. That's how you should think about it basically, and then just like add things on top of that. But I would also think about storytelling in like having different story arcs going like alongside each other. So maybe you have one problem that you're trying to solve that will be resolved in the end, and then you have another one that's resolved quicker, and then you have those layers. The more layers you have, the more interesting and the more diverse your story is going to be. Yeah, that is how I would describe storytelling. Hi, can you touch on first films? I've never seen or met a naturally talented starting filmmaker or a filmmaking prodigy. I see that major film directors hate their first films. I think most people do. How do you get over the slump of being discouraged and getting over the hating your first films if you have? Haha. Thank you, David Martinez. I don't think I hate, for instance, like Zero Silence was my first like doc, but it wasn't my first film in that sense. But I made like short films before that. But I think I'm super critical of both these films, and that's, I think, a thing that you need to be, because then you will like develop to the next film. You want to push it further. You don't want to do the same thing and stay the same. So I'd say, like, if I look at it like critically, this film here, Zero Silence, it was too much of a current affairs driven doc. It was like, because it was a first film, it was really anxious to kind of please both like funders, both film circuit people, all that, just because it was like a film that it could have never been made because we didn't get funded, or like it was made but with limited like broadcasting funds. And then it comes to the like Pearl of Africa, I would be critical of like how it was shot in terms of like I probably would have, I don't know if I would have shot more. I would probably have shot it a different way. I would probably have directed a different way. I would have casted it. Maybe not casted a different person, but I would have done the casting process differently. Today I feel like I know a lot more, so that's what I think is the issue with the old films. It's kind of weird because like Roy Andersson, which is one of my, or at least like starting out, he was the biggest inspiration to me. He hates his first film, A Love Story, which I consider to be like one of the best films ever made. So it's kind of funny how people perceive their own work and how like the audience perceives it. Because it's like, to me, it's the most like honest type of filmmaking that he has ever made. And then eventually like his artistry kind of took over, and then he's a brilliant filmmaker, but still that film had something that was so like honest and down to earth and kind of raw that made it better. The same I feel with like Ruben Östlund, who's a Swedish filmmaker. The biggest inspiration to me of all his films, and he'd made like Oscar nominated films and all that, I think, or did he? Maybe he didn't. I think he did. I'm not sure. Anyways, the guitar Mongoloid was like the biggest inspiration when I was in film school. And he had made that. It was a fiction film, but it was made with amateur actors and was like the first of its kind that I saw. And I was just like amazed by the whole thing. It was shot on DV, and there was like a raw and realistic feel to it that I think actually was kind of what also got me interested in doc filmmaking, because that had that whole rawness that I like about it, and it's unpredictable. It's just scenes and then life that plays out. That's what I like. So I think that's the thing, that people will probably think that their new work is always better because they're better technically. That doesn't always mean that the film is better, but sometimes it actually might be so. I don't know if that answers that question. Let me see. Any advice? Exactly. Forgot about that. I think the only way to kind of get past any doubt that you have is to keep on making stuff. I think that's probably the best way. As soon as you stop to kind of think and like for too long, think about and evaluate things, and like me, I have a natural tendency to just want to do the next thing and not want to be... Like I had to fight to actually finish stuff for a while, to kind of commit to one project and not make 5 or 15 at the same time. Now I've kind of developed that tendency to actually finish stuff. But it was for a couple of years that I just like started projects. And I think that's also a thing, that you need to really like commit to one thing and then finish that. Otherwise, you know, you won't have the courage or the stamina to do the next thing because you don't feel like you can complete it, or it's just gonna be shit or whatever. What are the main tips and advices you can give somebody that's just starting out? How can I draw people's attention for the first time as a 17-year-old? I think if you tell personal stories, people will be engaged and people will kind of care about what you do. It all kind of comes down to you wanting to tell a story that emotionally gets people affected somehow, I think. And if you can do that, then I think that you're on your way. But if for instance, you do it too technically, or you get too like hung up on certain details, like having the right gear and that sort of thing, then I think that stands in the way of you doing that. Like I had a lot of the things that had, like, it was pretty good, the stuff that I did on DV even, and that camera would probably have held up for a while longer than, like, then I got a new camera and you get on to the next and the next. Today I feel like I want to work on cinema cameras that are as tiny as they can be. Ironically, I have the Ursa, but I want to have the mix of it. So I like working with the Ursa, but I also want the pocket 4K camera. And that stands in the way, like me wanting to do that, it stands in the way of telling stories. So I think that that's like a big thing, that you kind of need to just start making stuff and start telling stories. And if you want to get people's attention and interest, then tell stories about certain communities and try to get it out to those communities. And if that's online or offline, whatever it is, just start telling stories that are like personal, and you'll probably find a space for them. How can I soften my footage in post to make it more cinematic? You can, I'm guessing contrast wise, but like if you have, for instance, Sony cameras do a lot of sharpening in cameras, I would, or for instance the Mavic camera is a perfect example. I would, or any drone probably, I would like soften that with blur as well. But then like it's usually like I don't know if people are aware of like the S, is there an S? Maybe it's, I don't know. S curves is usually what you use when you do post-production of things. That's like a basic contrast curve. Highlights go up and blacks go down. And it's like an S, that's why it's called an S curve. S. To compensate for that, if you don't shoot in log or in raw or something like that, you need to compensate for that S curve. So you need to push the shadows up a bit and you need to push the highlights down a bit. That's usually how you make it a bit softer. Because usually they push it so hard because they want to hide the artifacts in the shadows and stuff. So you probably need to compensate for that, how you expose things, to not get all that noise introduced. But that's how I would do it. Oops, this chat is like jumping up and down. I'm thinking it would be useful if I can save this live chat in your channel. How do you mean copy it? You can just copy it, right? Or at least I can do that. I'm starting. Okay, I'm starting with photography and filmmaking. Do you think that would that I would look for customers or keep improving and wait for the moment that someone call me? That's so hard. I think that you get better by working. So it's super difficult when you start out to live off your craft, because you're not better than the people that already are working with people. So you probably, to get good job, you need to be different, and you need to make things that are visible, that people are inspired by, and that's why they contact you. So in that sense, you should just keep making things, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't make things for people at the same time. I think that you should probably do both, but don't like stop and just make stuff for other people and stop making stuff for yourself. Like both should be something you focus on. Name 3 films, docs that any inspiring storytellers must watch to improve their skills. Okay, Bombay Beach is like Alma Harel, great. Like that was one of the most inspiring films that I've seen, like in like the grown-up filmmaking years. And I actually competed against her in with the Pearl of Africa in hot dogs. So that was when you knew that, oh, okay, so this film is pretty good, because she had made her new film there. That's an amazing film. What else? I want to say Roy Andersson, so that people can see like a different type of filmmaking. So let's say Roy Andersson, Songs from the Second Floor. That's a very different type of storytelling. Anybody that's seen it probably understands what I mean. But I think most YouTube filmmakers should probably understand that like narrative storytelling is something different than what like YouTube is. And what else? Gasland, I'd say as well. So then you have like very different type of stories. Or actually, take Gasland back and put Man on Wire in instead. Man on Wire is a reenactment doc, so everything is based on somebody that went, I guess, was it World Trade Center between the towers or something, that went across, walking on a high line. It's way back, but then yeah, watch that. 2 very good films. 3, 4 with Gasland. Gasland is a good story as well, just because it's a personal story. So you see like somebody that makes something personal and just explores their own reality and make things that are just themselves being affected, how that affects like how you talk as a voiceover and all those things, and how it affects the narrative structure. Those 4 would probably be good for anybody to watch. Hey man, what's your advice for the crazy broke filmmaker trying to sell the film that can't go on to the next until they do? It's such a big thing. If you look at the biggest problem, I think, that is making like the next film after your first film. A lot of people make one film, but most people don't make a second film. And that's because it was too draining, and it's like a big obstacle to overcome just making the film, and then you have to sell it as well, and that's like mission impossible. So I would just continue making stuff. I wouldn't be like, if your film doesn't sell, it doesn't sell. I think in general people shouldn't expect their film to sell. I think people should actually build something else. Like looking at Maddie is like a perfect example of somebody that's actually succeeded with just doing like building a YouTube platform that actually he could go out and direct things and he would be fine. He could just make his YouTube channel and go out and do anything, because he's just living off of that. So I would try to build something that is that, rather than like focusing on selling a film. Because today I feel like we're in the same place that the music industry was at one point in time, when people stopped buying records and people don't buy films. Like there's no money in films. There are too many filmmakers making films. So the thing that you're gonna realize eventually, I'm guessing, is that nobody in the film industry, in the doc world, makes any money. Most filmmakers do like advertising, or they do education, or all those things to make like a decent living. And then on top of that, they make docs because they love it and because it's like an additional income, but it's mainly to challenge themselves. And for me, it's also like a calling card. So I get like advertising work because I do the docs. They see a style and they contact me to get the same thing. So it's just the aspect of like seeing it as the only way to move forward is probably going to be like a recipe for failure. So I would just like drop the whole thing that sure you should try to sell it, but I wouldn't expect it, and I wouldn't base my whole future on it. Because like Zero Silence, the only reason it sold, and it sold for like, I guess like 50, 60k or something like that. The only reason we got it was because one person on our team that I co-directed it with had a close connection with the broadcaster, and that got us a chance. And then the revolution happened, and all of a sudden they were interested, and it was like timing and all that. But it was not because like, oh, this is just a great film, oh, let's buy it. It doesn't work that way. It's all about like connections and having like a reputation, first of all. and then like comes the whole money aspect of it. And like certain times it's not the right match. It's not, yeah, it's super difficult to sell anything. So I wouldn't base my career off of that. I would try to build something else. Let's see, crazy question. If you were kidnapped in a documentary trip, and your kidnappers would allow you to only subscribe to 5 filmmakers or video creators on YouTube, who would those filmmakers, creators be? Okay. Let's see. Who would I subscribe to? I gotta check my subscriptions. I would say Joe Rogan, because he probably gets me a lot of time, so I can spend a lot of hours listening to people talk. So that would probably be a good thing. And since Vice does so much stuff that I don't subscribe to them because they do too much stuff, but if I was kidnapped, they probably would be a good channel to kind of follow. Let's see, what else? I guess Justin Escalona would be one, because he also makes like daily almost, like 5 days a week. Play the Game Films, good channel, especially if you're young. I'm not that young though. Okay, so I'm on the wrong, I have a personal account as well on YouTube, so let me check those subscriptions. Those are the ones that I would go for. No Jumper probably, because that's also good interviews. Casey probably. I think I'm up to 5 now. And the UFC, that would be it. Yeah, and that was probably 6, so I would probably have to take one away. But yeah, that would be it. Have you considered starting a very ambitious project after the screening in Cannes? Like I'm guessing, have you considered? I'm guessing you're referring to like my first film that was in Cannes. I'm not sure. Then we went to Cannes with a short film a while back, like many years ago. Oops. And then that film we used as a calling card to try to get a fiction feature film made. And we pitched it to like the Swedish Film Institute at that time. The guy that was a commissioning editor at that time was interested, and then we went back and we started writing the script, and then all of a sudden he went away and that whole project kind of fell apart. I'm wondering what happened after that. Did we put that to rest? I know we made like a feature film afterwards, but I DOP'd that and I helped the director kind of with notes on his script and stuff, but I don't think we made that film that we wanted to make. So I made docs instead. Which iCup did you use on your GH5? And did it block the sensor? Would you buy it again? Yeah, this is a funny thing. It's actually something that I would buy. And yes, it does block the sensor. But the thing is, you can't buy it. It doesn't exist anymore. I've tried to search for it on eBay and I can't find it. It's impossible to find. There are ones for like Canon and stuff, but not for the GH5. It was so much more comfortable to have that than the one I have now, but I dropped it. It somehow just got like pushed off and then it's gone. So I don't have it anymore, unfortunately. But yeah, I would buy it again if I could find it. Okay, let's see. One more from here and one more from there, probably. Okay, last one here. If you How do you think YouTube will evolve and online video as a whole? We see this transformation during the last few years. 5 to 10 years, there will be so much more opportunities to make money as a creator. And how do you think video and video formats will evolve? I think that you can see now that people are making YouTube into their like main source of income, not the AdSense, but like they use the platform of YouTube channel, their YouTube channel, to have like a sustainable living. I think that one thing that will happen, and this is just like looking at myself and like Levi from Left Coast and Maddie, and I guess not so much McKinnon, but those, us three, I would say, have kind of a similar strategy to how we can sustain our filmmaking. And it comes down to like building a channel that's basically educational and entertaining and inspirational. So this channel is a little bit different than Maddie's, because Maddie's is more like educational than it's like his craft of narrative storytelling. I tell just as much stories that is like docs here that I do just like tutorial based stuff. And Levi, I think, does pretty much the same type of thing that I do. By the way, Levi and I talked about doing like a live stream together. What should we talk about if we do that? But that whole thing is based on like, we see YouTube as a platform to build a community and build an audience. And if you can do that, which I think is key, building an audience is probably more important than going to festivals in like 5 or 10 years. I think festivals will kind of get irrelevant, and platforms like having your YouTube channel or having other people collaborate, like we do now with Maddie, for instance. Those types of collaborations, I think, are also key for you to build that audience and build that channel and do stuff together. For Maddie, it's like he wants to do a doc, that's why he's doing it, and we want to collaborate with him because he's a good DOP and he's local in Toronto, because we also want to have co-production in Canada. So we need like certain A roles needs to be casted, or like they need to be Canadians. So for him, he's like the perfect type of collaborator for us, because he does that, and I want to move away from DOPing. So he's a good like partner, both in terms of like he has a YouTube channel, he has the same type of philosophy on how to work with film, but he also is like an asset because we can apply for funding in Canada because of him being Canadian. So trying to piece the puzzle together, like if you make docs, you need to think about like how do you do stuff like practically. Do you co-produce with this country that you're producing in? Because we're Swedish, we can co-produce with Canadians, for instance. But then on the level of like YouTube, you need to think about it in a different way, that it's like a basic sustainable business in itself. And for both us, I think us and, yeah, probably the same for Maddie as well, but Levi and us, we have pretty much a similar type of thing going, where we make docs. He's doing a series now that you probably should check out about highlining, for instance. That whole series is something that's very similar to what we've done before, with especially like Confused African and like other series that we've done. And what our philosophy is more based on like, okay, can we do courses that's like more in depth? Can we do like live streams that are more like this, that are engaging and getting people to come and ask questions? That's both people from the courses, but also people that just watch the YouTube channel. And if you have that platform, if you are like Maddie in the scale of like 400K or something, then you actually have like a platform that's enough to sustain yourself just off of doing that. And then you can go out and make your films. And all you have to do is sustain your YouTube channel and make those courses and make those like packages like LUTs and that sort of thing. That's what I think is going to change YouTube, when more people understand that it's a viable way of doing things. And then like working with brands and collaborating that way as well. But building everything around like you as a creator and your story. Because YouTube is, and has always been, I think, based on personalities and like personal storytelling. And that's gonna be consistent. YouTube won't be able to change into like a TV channel. I think that whole like strive that people have to make TV programs, for instance. A lot of people that become a name and an influencer on YouTube, they want to make a TV show. That I think is like it's counterproductive. I'm coming from the other way. Like, I don't want to do TV. I think that's boring. That's like an old dead type of way of telling stories. YouTube's essence is the personal stuff. So when you have a channel that's like personal, where you have all the authority to make all decisions and push stuff out, like it's live or it's this and it's that, that's the stuff that's interesting to me as a creator. And I think when more people understand that, like Will Smith, for instance, then the platform will change, because it's going to push a lot of the people that are smaller creators and aren't part of the industry. I think they will struggle if they don't find the platform where they actually can sustain themselves. And I think that will kind of change YouTube once that happens. Once there are like 10 Will Smiths, things will probably start changing a lot, because then there will be a wave of people coming onto YouTube. And mainly for me, I think it's a good thing, because you're early there. But I think the thing that you have to kind of consider if you're a creator is like, how do you actually make money, and how do you sustain yourself if you want to do it full time? Because right now we do this part time just as a thing that we're building, but our main thing is actually making advertising. So that has to be prioritized. So for instance, this live stream ended up on a Wednesday instead of a Monday because of that. But that whole thing I'm fine with. We have like an ambitious goal with the channel, but we don't have like, oh, it has to happen tomorrow. For a lot of people, I think it's the other way, where they don't have a decent living, so they have to make the channel work. And maybe for us that would be a good thing, because we would focus more. But yeah, I think that's like a big shift that I see, because people that are early, for instance, I don't consider myself to be early, but in reality, me, Levi, and Maddie are super early if you look at the industry as a whole when it comes to the doc industry. They're so way after that it's like, it's crazy. So if you are on YouTube, you already have an advantage, because people aren't understanding the whole new way of like building audiences. That's, to me, necessity for like sustaining yourself. And in the end, anybody can do it as a hobby, but if you want to do it as like a profession, if you want to make docs and actually survive making them, then I think people will stop thinking about it in like, okay, we make this film, we need to make money off of this film. And instead they will think about, okay, we make this film, it's a platform to sell this and that, which could be like courses, it could be research material, it could be anything depending on what your idea is. But that's basically how I see it changing. It's going to be more based around businesses, like small businesses, rather than like just random people doing random stuff. And that's going to up the game, I think. Like, people will make better stuff, like more produced, but still keep it personal, because I don't see that going away in like 5 or 10 years. I can't see how the platform's going to change that much. Because the personal thing is what makes YouTube unique. People that are like a channel that's a talk show or something like that, they rarely get like the same impact as a Casey, for instance, just because it's not the same. It doesn't affect people the same way. Okay, I think that's it for now. Long answer. I hope that kind of explains how I see it. But check out what Levi does and check out what Maddie does. Like, look at how we do things, like how we're trying to build a platform around like what we do. I think people will have their academies, like for instance Roberta Blake has an academy that's more educational, that's more in-depth. That's how I think it's gonna evolve to something that actually makes all creators more independent, and they can do whatever they want when they want, because they've built that. And then you're gonna see more unique stuff and more like, yeah, better stuff, in my opinion at least. Okay, see you guys. What do you think? How is YouTube gonna change in the next 5 or 10 years? Great question, by the way, Jacob. Bye bye. Okay, so I actually stop here. I don't stop there. Okay, bye bye.